Hello, everyone. I'm Beth McGinnis, and I want to tell you about my podcast and website here in Alabama. For years, I've been captivated by the rich sounds and stories of my home state, and this year, I've started sharing them. Here in Alabama showcases the voices and music of the remarkable and resilient Alabamians I know and love. I teach musicology at Samford University. For a few years, I've been taking my Samford students to Perry County to work alongside the people there. We've seen how the old music traditions have evolved and how they still carry and nourish communities. For me, this has felt like a homecoming. I grew up in Livingston, not far from Perry County, and the people I've met in my capacity as a musicology professor have taken me back to my childhood. I don't think you have to have grown up in Alabama to experience the power of this music, though. Let me show you what I mean. Here's the Here in Alabama homepage, www.heareinalabama.com. That's HEAR in Alabama.com. It includes not only the podcast episodes for Here in Alabama, but also the full oral history interviews on which I've based the podcast. Let me take you through the episodes of Season 1, which centers on Perry County. You may know that Samford University is in Birmingham, but it started as Howard College in Marion, which is the county seat of Perry County. In the summer of 2019, I crossed paths in Marion with a group of musicians from Alabama and Brazil, the Crossroads Group. You'll hear about this group and their music in the first 2 episodes of the Here in Alabama podcast, and you can see in this picture the back when photo gallery where I first heard them. One of the group members, Saloma, told us how after the Civil War, many Southerners left the United States to escape Yankee domination. Most of them went to Brazil, where slavery was still legal. The enslaved Africans they brought with them endured the same kinds of racism and cruelty that happened in the American South, including Perry County. Saloma believes they survived this unspeakable cruelty because they carried spiritual nutrients in their old vernacular music traditions. Their songs nourished them and bore them. The Crossroads Group found resonance in the musical traditions that enslaved Africans brought with them into both Alabama and Brazil. And Crossroads wove these mutually resonant traditions into performance art, combining music, dance, and poetry. They stayed in Alabama for a month that summer, performing in Selma, Tuskegee, Birmingham, and back in Marion to finish the tour. They had such a powerful effect on me that first night in Marion that I heard and recorded them 3 more times. After the Brazilian musicians had gone home and the dust had settled, I spoke with co-director Lloyd Bricken about the project. Episodes 1 and 2 of the podcast tell how I set out to learn more about this music and not necessarily to be changed, but how, actually, I've found myself spiritually nourished and changed by the music and the people who carry it from one generation to another. Besides teaching musicology at Samford, I also play the organ at Vestavia Hills Baptist Church in Birmingham. For the past 2 years, in March, Vestavia Hills has observed a cappella Sunday. When the minister of music first told me about it, I thought all the singing would be unaccompanied, but that I would still play service music. But he said there would be no instrumental accompaniment at all in the service, and that I could go get donuts if I wanted to. I considered the donuts, but decided what I really wanted to do with my Sunday off was visit Proofwell Baptist Church in Sprott, Alabama. I had heard about the powerful old style of singing they do there, and I wanted to hear it for myself. Sprott is an unincorporated town in Perry County, northeast of Marion, at the intersection of Highways 183 and 14. At that crossroads is a general store and post office that was a community gathering place for more than 100 years. There's a picture of it in the Library of Congress, taken in the 1930s by Walker Evans for the book about Alabama sharecroppers, Let Us Now Praise Famous Men, which Evans did with James Agee. Provewell Baptist Church sits just a little farther down Highway 183 from the old post office. The first time I went there in 2019, it was Pastor Jerome Kirk's 10th anniversary. I returned to Provewell in March of 2020 when my church again observed A Cappella Sunday. Between these visits in the summer of 2019, I came back to Perry County and sat down with two of the church members. One of them, Ms. Frances Ford, grew up in Perry County. The other, Dr. Pilar Murphy, is a relative newcomer. Both of these women have made immense contributions to the quality of life in Perry County. Ms. Ford is the director of Sowing Seeds of Hope, an organization dedicated to improving health care, housing, education, and spiritual renewal for the county's residents. Dr. Murphy is a pharmacy professor at Samford University, but she lives in Marion and goes to work every day at the Perry County Health Department, where she and her students conduct a hypertension clinic, health fairs, and other services. Dr. Murphy is the choir director at Provewell, and Ms. Ford also sings in the choir. I have come to know Provewell Baptist Church through the lives of these two remarkable women. Both of them describe their work as a mission, and they describe their singing as a ministry. By some measures, Perry County is one of the most impoverished counties in the country. The poverty rate there in 2017 was almost 42%, compared to a national average of about 13%. Both of the public schools in Perry County have qualified for the community eligibility provision of the National School Lunch and Breakfast programs, so both breakfast and lunch are served to all enrolled students free of charge. In the midst of this economic struggle, there are community leaders working day in and day out to improve the quality of life of Perry County's residents. I already told you about Ms. Frances Ford and Dr. Pilar Murphy. The public schools have their own share of dynamic leaders too, and one of their initiatives is a small but thriving band education program. In the minds of these Perry County educators, band education is not just about musical culture, it's about character formation. Part of my own teaching is to help my students at Samford University connect to the musical culture in our home state. That's what led us to Perry County, where Samford actually began as Howard College in Marion, the county seat. A couple years ago, my students and I started a partnership with the two public school bands in Perry County. Francis Marion School is in Marion, and Robert C. Hatch is in Uniontown, about 20 miles away. Both schools are K through 12 now. They've consolidated with the younger grades because the communities have been losing residents. One way to understand the story of both decline and hope in these schools is through the sojourn of one of their principals, Dr. Kathy Trimble. Dr. Trimble grew up in Marion, and in what she sees as an irony of ironies, she returned later in her life as principal of the school she had attended, Francis Marion. In the spring of 2018, my Samford students interviewed Dr. Trimble, and she told us how much has changed in her community. We also interviewed Mr. Isaac Lanier, the band director at Robert C. Hatch School in Uniontown. We visited both schools that spring, and the Uniontown band came to Samford. Then, in 2019, both bands visited Samford for a day of rehearsing, performing, community building, and celebrating. What my students and I have found in Perry County is a vibrant and fascinating musical tradition. But more than that, we are seeing in these schools how music can instill character and discipline and healthy competition and an abiding commitment to a group. There's a lot more I want to explore in Perry County, but for Season 2, I'm focusing on Birmingham and some of the musicians I know there. the world-renowned euphonium player, Dr. Demondre Thurman, my friend Walker Burroughs, who was a finalist on American Idol, and members of a brass band called the Mutton Chops. Season 3 is in the works too. It features research by Chloe Smith, a recent master's graduate of Yale University. Chloe wrote a fascinating master's thesis on music by Birmingham musicians during the Civil Rights era, and she spoke with me about it recently. I can't wait to share her discoveries with you. You may have heard the advice Fred Rogers' mother gave him to look for the helpers. Mr. Rogers is one of my lifelong heroes, and I'm trying to follow his mother's advice with the Community Resources page at hereinalabama.com. Here you'll find a link to Sowing Seeds of Hope, the nonprofit organization through which Ms. Frances Ford and Dr. Pilar Murphy work to improve the quality of life of everyone in Perry County. There's a link to the Alabama Coalition for Healthy Mothers and Children, a comprehensive database of help resources for people to find what they need without looking on 50 websites or making 100 calls. My former pastor, Dr. Gary Furr, chairs this organization, and he also plays bluegrass music. I'll probably ask him for an interview someday. The last link that's currently on this page is for the Music Maker Relief Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit I stumbled across recently. It was founded to preserve the musical traditions of the South by directly supporting the musicians who make it, ensuring their voices will not be silenced by poverty and time. Music Maker will give future generations access to their heritage through documentation and performance programs that build knowledge and appreciation of America's musical traditions. These are the words of the Music Maker Relief Foundation, but they also capture the hopes and vision I hold for Here in Alabama. You'll notice the Here in Alabama Resources tab also contains a subpage for educational resources. I'm working on this now as I'm preparing this presentation, but I hope that by the time you hear the presentation, this page will include study questions and background on Alabama's Black Belt and other resources for classroom and studio teachers. You're also welcome to contact me if you would like me to develop a lesson plan tailored to a particular group. I hope you'll visit www.hereinalabama.com. That's HEAR in Alabama.com. You can listen to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. If you like it, please share it with others who might want to know more about the rich musical cultures here in Alabama. I welcome your comments and questions. You can email me at ermcginn@samford.edu. Thank you for listening.